Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Today's webinar is pre-recorded, so there is no live Q&A. However, you can submit your questions using the Q&A function of your console, and an NSF representative will follow up with you after the event. We'll now pass things over to today's NSF expert, Liz Figueredo. Take it away, Liz.
Hello, everyone. My name is Liz Figueredo, and I am the Quality and Regulatory Manager at QAI, an NSF company. First, a little bit about myself to explain what qualifies me to share this information with you today. I have worked in organic certification for over 20 years, serving as a technical reviewer, an inspector, and now quality and accreditation. When I joined QAI in 2008, NSF was just starting the development of this standard. I had the opportunity to roll up my sleeves and to contribute to both the development and implementation of this standard, as well as the QAI certification program that supports it. Today, I continue to stay deeply involved in the industry as an active voting member on the Joint Committee for Organic Personal Care, helping to shape the future of this organic standard. I'm looking forward to diving into this topic with you. Today, I aim to explain the background and scope of this standard, provide detailed information on the allowed and prohibited chemical processes and ingredients, explain how organic content is determined, review labeling requirements, and explain how to get certified. We have a very full agenda with a lot of technical information, so let's get started. This standard was developed in 2009 with the goal of creating a consensus-based standard that is respected by retailers and consumers to validate and verify organic claims made on organic personal care products. As personal care products are not the same as food products, it is difficult and sometimes impossible to make a viable product that complies with the USDA's National Organic Program. A new standard was necessary that would allow manufacturers to make organic claims on personal care products using select ingredients that would not be permissible under organic regulations, while still allowing an on-pack designated seal representing the product was made in adherence to strict manufacturing practices using a minimum of 70% organically derived ingredients. The standard is a voluntary consensus-based standard. Any recommended changes to the standard must be submitted for review and voted on by the Joint Committee. Scope. The products that are covered by this standard include cosmetics, personal hygiene products, rinse off and leave on personal care products, and oral care products. Now for the technical content. We will review each allowed process and the ingredients made from those processes. We will then review the illustrated lists of ingredients that are expressly permitted or prohibited. Note that as technology and chemistry are continually evolving, new methods of making compliant ingredients arise. Keep in mind that the standard can be updated to include new or alternate methods or ingredients following the formal procedure. This standard was made as an alternative to the USDA NOP, or National Organic Program, regulations. That means that any allowed process under the NOP, saponification, transesterification, and any allowed non-organic ingredient, for example, citric acid, glycerin, are allowed under this standard. Table 5.1 specifies ecological ag-based botano-chemical processes that make ingredients that are not permitted under the NOP, but are allowed under this standard. Botano-chemical is defined as materials whose origin is plant-based and is not from petroleum. Examples include hydrogenation, hydrogenolysis, glucosidation, and sulfation. For ingredients made using organic agricultural inputs, for example, certified organic oils, the column on the right provides the percent organic content that the finished ingredient would contribute to the final product. Allowed reagents and catalysts. The allowed reagents and catalysts under this standard include potassium or sodium hydroxide, metal catalysts, copper chromite, zinc oxide, strong mineral acids, chlorosulfonic acid, methanol, phosphorus trichloride or thionyl chloride, hydrogen, and sulfur trioxide. Now we'll take a deep dive into each of the allowed processes and some of the ingredients that are made from them. First up, we have saponification. As mentioned previously, saponification is an allowed process under the USDA's organic regulations. Here are some examples of ingredients made by saponification. Common ingredients include potassium and sodium cocoate, hempate, olivate, palmate, castrate, and palm kernelate. Enzyme catalyzed or alkali catalyzed hydrolysis. So there are two types of hydrolysis that are allowed. The first, enzyme catalyzed or alkali catalyzed, is allowed under the organic food regulations and begins with agricultural inputs such as proteins, carbs, and sugars, and a hydroxide catalyst. Using certified organic agricultural inputs would result in the finished ingredient having an organic content of 98%. Here are some examples of common ingredients made by this type of hydrolysis. The other form of hydrolysis, fat splitting of oils to produce glycerin and fatty acids. Using steam with or without a metal catalyst to split into an oil into a fatty acid and glycerin. Examples of allowed catalysts include zinc oxide, nickel, and palladium. Examples of ingredients made by this process include glycerin and hydrolyzed proteins. Esterification of glycerin. Esterification is natural glycerin from the splitting of natural vegetable oils can be polymerized to a polyglycerol. With the liberation of water, it is heated with an alkaline material. Some of examples of ingredients made by this process include the following polyglycerols: non-catalyzed or alkali catalyzed esterification of organic oils, fatty acids, and alcohols to make esters. It's a mouthful. Fatty acids from vegetable oil are transferred from glycerin and combined with an alcohol to create an ester. Transesterification can also be done with vegetable oils and glycerin by adding a small amount of alkali or acid with heat. Examples of ingredients made using this process are shown here, such as sucrose cocoate, glycerol cocoate, and ethyl soyate, just to name a few. Another long one. Mineral acid catalyzed esterification or transesterification to produce various esters. The process of combining two ingredients, an organic acid and an alcohol, by applying heat and using an acid catalyst under vacuum to produce a new ingredient. Allowed reagents, none. Catalysts, sulfuric or phosphoric acid. Ag inputs include acid and alcohol. Some examples of ingredients made by this process include glycerol oleate, ascorbyl palmitate, amyl acetate, tocopherol acetate, glycerol caprate, and glycerol stearate. Hydrogenation of oils. Hydrogenation of oils is another allowed process, and your ag input would typically be a triglyceride. Some examples of ingredients that are made by hydrogenation of oils that would be permitted are your waxes, soy wax, jojoba wax, and stearic acid. Hydrogenolysis. Hydrogenolysis of methyl or ethyl esters of an oil with hydrogen to make fatty alcohols. The formation of fatty alcohols from esters and or from fatty acids directly. Allowed catalysts include methanol from natural gas, nickel, platinum, and palladium. And your ag inputs would be fats and oils again. Examples of fatty alcohol ingredients made by hydrogenolysis include the following alcohols: babassu, cedarol, cetyl, olive, palm, palm kernel, jojoba, sterol, and laurel. Glucosidation, or combining a fatty alcohol with glucose, is also allowed. Some examples of ingredients produced by glucosidation that are allowed would be cetyl glucoside, cocoa glucoside, decoglucoside, and laurel glucoside. Sulfation. Sulfation, here shown on your screen, is another common practice allowed in the standard and produces our common surfactants: sodium cocoa sulfate, sodium lauryl sulfate, sodium babassu sulfate, sodium palm kernel sulfate, sodium pulsate sulfate, and so on. Again, this is an illustrative list, not exhaustive, and it's meant to provide you with some of the common ingredients approved under the standard. Protein fragment acylation is another allowed through method. It's pretty lengthy here. I will pause just for a moment to review the process on the screen before I provide some examples of allowed ingredients. Your examples of ingredients made by protein fragment acylation include sodium cocoyl glutamate, potassium cocoyl glutamate, disodium cocoyl glutamate, sodium olive oil glutamate, and potassium cocoyl glutamate. Now that we've talked about the processes and some of the ingredients that are produced by those processes that are allowed under the standard, let's review the lists of allowed and prohibited ingredients. These are provided in the standard. These are not exhaustive, and as mentioned earlier, can be updated to add, remove, or revise ingredients based on new information. Here are some allowed ingredients. On your left is a list of preservative ingredients from non-petroleum feedstocks. However, a tolerance is allowed for petroleum feedstocks for some ingredients based on their commercial availability. So, for example, benzoic acid, potassium sorbate, sodium benzoate, they're allowed from a petroleum feedstock when a non-petroleum feedstock is not commercially available, meaning it's not on the marketplace in a sufficient quantity, quality, function, or form. On the right, you have your allowed mineral ingredients, which include chalks, clays, pumice, iron, zinc, and tin oxides, stearate salts, and titanium dioxide. Again, these are expressly allowed in the standard. Here we have the illustrative list of processed ingredients for personal care produced by the NOP allowed processes. So again, NOP, National Organic Program, the processes that would be permitted under the NOP to produce ingredients. These are some examples that would be allowed using those processes. Again, this is included in the standard, and a lot of this was covered previously. This is an illustrative, not exhaustive list of ecological, ag-based, botano-chemical ingredients made by processes in Table 5.1. This would be listed in the informative annex of the standard, Table N1.2. As you'll see there in the heading, the tables have those ingredients that are known to be commercially available in an organic form, and those that are not known to be commercially available. So whenever possible, ingredients should be sourced from certified organic agricultural feedstocks. These would be allowed if from a non-organic form in the 30% non-organic that's allowed in the product. Next up, we have the list of prohibited ingredient types and classes. So you'll see here petroleum-derived preservatives, unless expressly permitted elsewhere in the standard, compounds with ethoxylate, PEG, or the suffix eth in the ingredient name, quat compounds, compounds with taurate, sultane, or sulfosinate in the ingredient name. And I will say this again, this is illustrative, not exhaustive. Exceptions can be made as new information is available. Here are some specific examples of ingredients prohibited under this standard. As you can see, butylene glycol was a prohibited ingredient until recently. New sources from natural materials have become available. If QAI were to receive a request to approve butylene glycol, we would review ingredient compliance documentation to ensure that the ingredients used in the manufacturing process are compliant with the requirements of the standard prior to approval. As new information comes to light, it can be brought before the Joint Committee to review and determine if it meets the requirements of the standard and can be added as an approved ingredient. Moving on here, we've covered the allowed and prohibited ingredients and processes, permitted or prohibited under the standard. We will now move on to determining the percent organic. As mentioned earlier in this presentation, in order to be certified to this standard, the product requested for certification must contain, at a minimum, 70% organic content. This section aims to explain how the calculation is done. Each organic ingredient must be certified to either the USDA NOP or EU 2018-848 in order to be considered for the organic content of the finished product. The percentage of all organically produced ingredients in an agricultural product sold, labeled, or represented as contains organic ingredients shall be calculated by dividing the total net weight, excluding mined minerals, water, and salt, of combined organic ingredients at formulation by the total weight, excluding mined minerals, water, and salt, of the combined ingredients. Or dividing the fluid volume of all organic ingredients, excluding mined minerals, water, and salt, by the fluid volume of the finished product. And for products containing organically produced ingredients in both solid and liquid form, dividing the combined weight of the solid ingredients and the weight of the liquid ingredients, excluding mined minerals, water, and salt, by the total weight, excluding, you guessed it, mined minerals, water, and salt of the combined ingredients. As discussed earlier, ingredients made using certified organic agricultural inputs or feedstocks by one of the allowed chemical processes have a predetermined or percent organic content that they can contribute towards the finished product. I will display that on the screen for you momentarily. The percentage must be rounded down to the nearest whole number. These are just notes for everything. And mined minerals, water, and salt, once again, are considered neutral and are therefore excluded from the net weight or volume of the finished product. I think we'll all remember mined minerals, water, and salt. Reconstitution. So added water can only be included in the weight in certain situations. So if you're reconstituting a juice concentrate to the USDA single strength standard of identity, reconstituting aloe concentrate to single strength, now that would be, we're talking about organic ingredients and reconstituting them to single strength based on the Aloe Council compliance standards, which I think is 199 to 1. And the water content of extracts and hydrosols are specified in 6.4 of the standard. We will talk about that in a moment. Water added to rehydrate dried powders, dried plant material is counted as added water. Manufacturer-specific standards of identity regarding water content, single strength values, or moisture content are not acceptable. The maximum organic contribution of an organic plant material to any processed product shall not exceed the weight of the starting plant material. Kind of a golden rule. Not surprising, the liquid expressed from organic plant material, i.e. juice, shall be considered fully organic. The same goes for essential oils. Essential oils are considered fully organic. Extraction with an acceptable but non-certified solvent. If you're using an acceptable but non-certified solvent for extraction, there is a specific calculation to determine percent organic in the standard. It is up on the screen now for you to see, but for the sake of time, I will not go into this calculation in too much detail. It's pretty complicated. Leaving this up just for a few more moments for those of you taking a closer look. Again, this example is provided in the standard. Moving on. Hydrosols and distillates. As mentioned earlier, they do have their own special way of calculating as well. If you are sourcing a hydrosol or distillate from your supplier, this information should be obtained by the supplier upon purchase. This is in order to enable the final manufacturer of the finished product to complete the organic content calculations. This we've been covering a few times now, touched on it a few times, and I'll show the slide on the screen again, or the table on the screen again. The values in table 6.1 shall be used in calculating the organic percentage of a final product using reacted ingredients. So those botano-ag-based ingredients made by the allowed processes. So showing that here on the screen one more time for you. As you can see, if you made a, if you did saponification of an oil, say to make soap, and you're using all organic agricultural feedstocks or inputs, the resulting product would be 98% organic. Now that's just the ingredient made, not the finished product that is being added to another finished product. Finally, here's an example calculation for percent organic content. This is assuming that the manufacturer of the finished product is also making some of these ecological ag-based botano-chemical ingredients in-house. So it breaks down the ingredients, the contributing organic content, the weight of those products in the finished product, and plus all of the other extra ingredients that are added to that finished product and what that would look like. Leaving that here on the screen just for a few more minutes. Okay, moving on. So understanding now the ingredients and processes allowed in a contains organic ingredients product, we'll move on to labeling and representation to other manufacturers and consumers. Use of the term organic. This is very important. The term organic shall only be used on labels and in labeling of raw or processed agricultural products, including ingredients that have been produced and handled in accordance with the USDA NLP criteria. The term organic shall not be used in a product name unless the product is certified to the USDA NLP. The claims 100% organic and made with organic are also controlled by the USDA NLP and should therefore not be allowed on products that are not certified to that standard. So it's very careful in how we represent the finished product and the ingredients within the product. We're going to go into a little bit more detail on some of that coming up. So some of you might be thinking or wondering how that previous restriction impacts brand names. It's very common for manufacturers, brand owners to use the word organic or one of its variants in their brand name to identify their product as containing organic ingredients or their commitment to organic. If the brand name contains the word organic or one of its variants on the principal display panel, the principal display panel or PDP of the product should also display the percentage of organic ingredients in the product. So something along the lines of contains 70% organic ingredients. And as along with the percent organic statement, those labels should also contain the NSF ANSI 305 logo or seal on the PDP. The intent here is to ensure that products are not made to be or appear, more organic than they are to the final consumer. If you are manufacturing ecological, ag-based botano-chemical ingredients and marketing them to another downstream manufacturer of finished product, there are certain requirements for your labels and documentation. The information must be made available to assist the downstream manufacturer with their organic content calculations. This is simply stating that an ingredient declaration is required on those bulk non-retail containers. All certified organic ingredients in the finished product must be identified as such in the ingredient declaration of product labels. You may do this by saying it's, organic aloe vera extract or organic aloe vera, or saying aloe vera with an asterisk or similar demarcation that is defined beneath the ingredient statement, explaining what that demarcation means, whether it's organic or, in some cases, it contains organic ingredients product. So if you're making in-house, you're making your cocoa glucoside in-house, you would also identify that separately with the different demarcation and what that definition is below the ingredient declaration. For these, this is the another requirement for those finished products. The certifier statement, basically who certified the product as compliant to NSF ANSI standard 305, is also required to be listed on the label beneath the ingredient declaration, somewhere on the information panel. Non-retail containers used to ship or store raw or processed agricultural product labeled as containing organic ingredients, shall display the production lot number of the product, the name and contact information of the manufacturer or distributor, name, contact information, and logo. Actually, that's not a requirement, just the name and contact information of the certifier. Identification of the product as contains organic ingredients, and the statement certified to NSF ANSI 305. Non-retail containers may display special handling instructions and may display the certifier's logo. This is basically saying that the INCI nomenclature is required. So following the INCI labeling system, that's just that that nomenclature needs to be on the labels. For ornamental containers, that where it would be difficult or impossible to include the full ingredient declaration on the label, this portion of the standard is just allowing for either a tag, label, or card affixed to the container, or in certain rare situations, a leaflet that is provided with the product at the point of sale to the consumer, that those required labeling elements could be included on those extra or extraneous tags. So if you think you qualify and would be interested in certification, we can take a look at what that certification process looks like. So the steps to certification. The first thing to do is gather all of your information, apply for certification with QAI. So contacting QAI, obtaining the required forms, and submitting formulas, ingredient compliance information, labels to QAI for review. The QAI technical reviewer will make a preliminary assessment based on the documentary review of your operation's ability to comply with the standard. This is an ISO 17065 accredited standard for QAI. We do follow the 17065 certification process. After the application for certification has been deemed to be complete, and everything appears to have the ability to comply on paper, the next step is an on-site inspection. An on-site inspection is a requirement, and a QAI inspector would arrange to conduct the on-site inspection, essentially verifying that what was communicated and conveyed to QAI during the application process is what is occurring on-site at the facility. The inspector would write up a report, provide a copy to you, and submit his or her report to QAI for a review. The post-inspection review would basically look at the inspector's findings. If there was a non-compliance, a post-inspection review would be, a letter would be issued to the operator to address any findings from that inspection. Once all findings were addressed and issues were resolved, the reviewer makes that recommendation for certification. The final step is to receive your certificate with the products listed, demonstrating your operations compliance with the NSF standard 305. Year after that, there would be an annual on-site inspection to ensure that the systems that were set up are continuing to comply with the standard. We have several resources available to anybody interested in learning more, available here on the screen, the QAI website, and also NSF's website. The standard is available for purchase in the NSF standard store. So thank you for taking your time today to join me in this technical webinar. I hope that you found this information to be useful, and I will pass it back over to Ken. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you very much, Liz. And thank you to all of our attendees. Remember, if you submitted a question via the console, NSF will be following up with you directly after the webinar. To learn more about any of NSF services, you can always visit nsf.org and use our search function. Thank you again for participating today, and everyone have a great day.